Nothing in this life is free, and so I've always been very skeptical of the free-to-play video game market, often renowned for employing psychological tactics to encourage addictive and compulsive behavior. Like many people, I have played Candy Crush. It's a perfect example of a predatory free-to-play game. It's bright, colourful, and intuitive to play. When you start your journey, it's very simple and visually stimulating, matching candies to generate power candies that explode, causing chain reactions and often generating more and even better power candies. Your score racks up like mad, 3 stars every level, your dopamine levels increasing with each gradually more complex level, but you're still nailing each one. Then right around the 40-50 level mark, the brakes come on hard, normally with one of the hard levels, which up till now have only been minor inconveniences, but now they're absolute stompers. You finish one, then a few levels further, another, and another, and your dopamine drops with each almost got it. But if only you had a couple more turns, and that's when they strike. Have a few extra turns. You only need some gold bars. Use the free ones we gave you earlier? Oh, if you insist, I'll sell you some, and I'll throw some boosters in as well. It's deeply manipulative and predatory, and it works. When I went hunting for admissions from users, I found one person on a subreddit admit to spending almost $400 over a few years. The free-to-play ends when the game has an algorithm to manipulate your success rates. It's more of a fruit machine than a puzzle game. So what does this have to do with Xdefiant? Simply, after playing Xdefiant over so many days, I definitely feel like its pre-season is the first 40-50 levels of Candy Crush. It's non-predatory, the battle pass is reasonable and refunds itself if completed. Sure, the rewards in it are pretty weak. There's a 5th faction that you have to get 700,000 experience for, or you can drop some cash for instant access. And there's the usual lineup of multicoloured garish skins you can buy for around £24. No time limits, no pay to win mechanics, so far feels pretty fair, and so I'm dubious. Will future stuff be free? Will new weapons only be obtainable via Battle Pass? Something will come to encourage spending, of that I'm sure, but as it stands right now, it's pretty fair. Now, I'm not talking from any great point of experience of the free-to-play market. I've avoided games such as Fortnite like they're riddled in tuberculosis, but Xdefiant stood out to me, a traditional 6v6 multiplayer that focused on competitive arcade action. It's basically a Call of Duty clone, and to that extent it handles very similarly, if a bit stiffer. Aim initially fell off, but this was due to aim acceleration being active by default. I was pleasantly surprised to see that the aim controls are highly customizable out of the gate, and it wasn't long before I found a setup that suited me. But movement definitely feels more stiff. Mantling, for instance, feels painfully slow. Reload cancelling can be clunky, and sliding is sloppy. Oddly enough, there is some bunny hopping, and twitchy users that hold controllers in funny ways abuse it to good effect. The initial dissonance did eventually fade, but if you switch between COD and Xdefiant, you will immediately notice the difference. Xdefiant is grindy. Weapons rank up very slowly, which might be to encourage buying the Battle Pass to get weapon XP boosters. In order to unlock new weapons, you need to complete challenges. Normally something like do 10,000 damage with the default weapon in a category. Guns have around 50 levels of unlockable attachments. Like COD, the more useful ones are unlocked near the end. Then for the completionists, there are masteries that are unlocked by getting a gun to level 100. There's a good lineup of guns as well, very similar to any COD on release. Although the secondary category is exclusively all pistols. No grenade or rocket launchers, which, whilst there are no kill streaks, seemed a bit of a shame to me. Weapon balancing is pretty consistent for now, although I'm highly dubious of the TAC-50 sniper rifle, which I'll mention more of in a moment. The grenade category is unfortunately uninspiring. By default you're locked to the frag, unless you use a pre-made class. Unlocking the others requires challenges to be completed, but there's nothing unique to Xdefiant here. Next are the factions. Xdefiant is a hero shooter, and there are 5 factions, 2 offensive classes, 1 tank, 1 healer, and 1 unlockable support. Each faction has 3 skins to unlock, which seem pretty reasonable in a free-to-play game. I've yet to unlock the final faction, so will be unable to comment on them. So the first faction, the Cleaners, are offensive. They have a passive trait where their guns do more damage at the expense of range. Factions have 2 abilities, and you can only choose 1 per loadout. Cleaners either have a drone that travels a short distance spewing fire before exploding, or they can drop a Molotov cocktail on the floor dealing huge explosive damage and denying the area. Their ultimate is a flamethrower that instantly kills anything it merely sniffs at, and the only drawback is its range. Though, to be fair, no ultimate in the game has long range, and I think the flamethrower is the strongest of the ultimates. Next is Libertad, the healers. I found this faction to be fairly superfluous. Passively, they regenerate health for themselves and nearby allies, but it's tiny, so you might as well wait for regen. If the abilities have too much overlap, you can either choose a canister that immediately starts healing for you and nearby allies, or you can drop a device that heals you and your team within its radius. Their ultimate is a backpack that doubles health and constantly regenerates health, which can be very powerful in tandem with the next class. Phantoms, the tank class. Passively, HP is boosted by 20, which realistically means Phantoms take an extra bullet to kill in effective ranges, save for the TAC-50 sniper rifle. In the firing range, the game indicates Phantoms can only be one-shotted to the head, but I've been one-shotted by the TAC-50 from full HP in the body. Anyway, their abilities are a deployable energy shield, lets your bullets through, but blocks enemies, and also a riot shield. I use Phantoms a lot, and the riot shield is definitely in need of a tweak. It's on a pretty quick cooldown and lasts for a decent amount of time, but you cannot duck with it, so your feet are always exposed. It's slim, and lastly you can only attack by melee bashing. I would have preferred it to have a longer cooldown, but be slightly wider, and also allow for aiming with a pistol. I think that would be reasonable balance, because as it stands, the energy shield is far more useful. The riot shield for some reason is also disabled by EMP grenades, which it shouldn't be. Ultimate wise, Phantoms activate a repellent shield and can only be harmed from within. They also have a scatter gun, but turning speeds are reduced, and I found it made me more of a sitting duck than a defensive stronghold. Lastly for me is the Echelon, the most popular faction next to Phantoms in my experience. Passively they have no movement audio and aren't supposed to appear on the minimap for actions that normally would, outside of firing a gun. Ability wise, they have rarely used digital ghillie suit, which is essentially optic camouflage. It's very brief, and when you're moving you'll have a pretty distinct outline. It's good for getting the odd sneaky kill or trying to flank the enemy team, but the other ability, and the one I see most often, is the intel suit, which has a 30-second cooldown and is live for 15 seconds. You'll ping a decent radius around you, and any enemy within that radius will be completely visible for yourself and the team through walls. It's a wall hack ability, and at the time of writing it is a very powerful ability. Lastly, their ultimate, the sonar goggles I think they're called, give the player persistent wall hack and also a very powerful handgun. I definitely think the intel suit needs nerfing in some way. Either the wall hack is for the actioning player only, or has a 45-second cooldown and is active for only 10 seconds. As it stands, it's incredibly powerful given every mode is objective. I can't speak about DedSec as I don't have them unlocked, and not many other people do either, as they're pretty rare to bump into. Overall, nothing is too broken here. There's definitely a meta with the Echelon faction at the moment, and only time will tell how the balancing will be when more factions are included. I'll talk a bit more about my opinions on the hero element of this game later. But before I go all in on my criticisms, I'll cover the maps and modes. Map variety, in my opinion, is pretty generous. 10 small to mid-sized maps. There's been Call of Duties with fewer base maps and a hefty price tag, so 10 of these is fine, and then there is also 4 large linear segmented maps, save for the escort and zone control playlists. There is no team deathmatch mode in Xdefiant, which may annoy some, but the game is focused to be a hero shooter and for players to coordinate roles to complete objectives. I think this mode is due to come out later, but for now on the smaller maps you have Domination and Occupy, or Hardpoint as it's known to a COD player, and Hotshot, which is like a deathmatch mode, but chaining kills buffs your hero, so it's similar to those crank playlists I've seen in COD. Anyway, Escort and Zone Control are exclusive to the 4 larger maps, and these are like the war mode levels in Modern Warfare 3. So in Escort, one team is tasked with guarding a robot along a fixed route, and the other stopping them. Whoever gets the robot furthest wins. The first team set the bar, which is a novel idea. So if one team gets hammered at the beginning and only moves the robot say 10% of the way, then on the next round when the teams flip, the Escort team only needs to move the robot 11% to win the entire match. Zone control is very similar. Instead of robot to guide, there are 5 zones that attackers have to occupy in series to win. I do like Escort as it was one of my favourite modes in Black Ops 3. But next on to the maps. Time to be blunt. I hate the map design in this game, detest it. Even the small to medium maps are just as guilty. All 14 maps are essentially 3-lane maps, but they're all very messy and convoluted. Map design is Swiss cheese. There are so many lanes and cut-throughs that it's really difficult to lock down a defensive point. Take the Western movie set map. You have the central lane, which also has 2-story buildings either side. Each end of the central lane has a raised position. The B point has central and corner cover, but there is also 4 vantage points overlooking B. The outside lanes have a lower and upper ramp cave section. The A and C points are located in corners with lower and upper level vantage points with multiple paths in. Even a really small map like the Sports Arena one has 2 tiered outer lanes, various cut-throughs and messy spawns with multiple doors. Spawn camping can be pretty rife on this particular map. There's also just so much clutter and debris everywhere. Look at this map. You have the spawn point almost on top of the courtyard and then the A zone. Then you have B in the building looking down onto the courtyard. So many positions to bear in mind, and when you have echelon users flanking with the ghillie suit, you're incredibly vulnerable. Map flow is pretty awful, and whilst the spawns can be aggressively anchored, the fact the maps are so porous is why it's so difficult to gauge where enemies are coming from. This is also why echelon is so popular. The intel and ghillie suit is so powerful, taking advantage of the convoluted maps. For me, the map design is the biggest thing holding the game back and detracting from my enjoyment. Things aren't much better for the larger maps either. In fact, the issue is compounded because there are parts of the map so far away from the robot path or the control zones, it's hard to keep track of enemies moving through them. These kind of modes work better with more linear and balanced lanes. It should be down to skill and gunplay that you hold your lane or break through a choke point. It's not possible to track every single lane, rat hole, window and balcony in the game. My next criticism is very much my own personal taste, but as a hero shooter, by keeping the time to kill so low, it reduces the effectiveness of the hero roles. Xdefiant has a TTK similar to Call of Duty. I think COD is around 300 milliseconds and Xdefiant is around 400 milliseconds. Those are vague ballpark numbers, but my point is it's pretty small. I think the inconsistent hit detection is what makes people think the time to kill is higher, with lots of people having experienced occasions where they're pumping whole clips to down one person and getting blown away in the blink of an eye. So even with the Phantom's slightly more HP, they don't feel that much better than, say, a cleaner at being a defender. Their abilities do help them in this regard, but Phantoms are easily countered by EMP grenades, and with such a low time to kill, what's the point of a healer role? A game like Halo would do much better with hero roles. The time to kill in Halo is like an age compared to COD or Xdefiant. It's a game that really does require team tactics, because unless you have a shotgun, rocket launcher, or you're a dab hand with a sniper rifle, you will not fare well playing Halo like a lone wolf. You can see this in Xdefiant. High skill players run around ignoring the objective and racking up high kill counts. In any one game, there is normally 1 or 2 people actually on the objective or defending it. The amount of times there is that one player constantly pushing into the enemy spawn, upsetting the turbulent map flow even further in the pursuit of a few spawn kills. And Xdefiant rewards this. Those ultimates I mentioned earlier, kills fill the ultimate gauge by 5%, whilst claiming the objective seems to only give around 4%. There are definitely boosts to this, killing enemies on an objective or getting a kill spree, as people tend to get their ultimate around the 20 to 25 kill mark. But in all honesty, ultimates are really rare, to the point I go games without seeing any of them, as the charge time is just too long. Ultimately for me, I'm disappointed. I was hoping Xdefiant would be the boot to kick Call of Duty off its laurels and make it pull its finger out. High hopes, I know, especially given that this is a Ubisoft game, and they're not exactly known for their originality. I don't particularly enjoy playing Xdefiant. I did at first, I was feeling pretty impressed, but the more time I spend with it, the more frustrated I get with their choices and execution, and at the end of the day, it's just not a compelling enough game to keep me engaged or even to think about spending a penny on it. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for listening. I'm Parabellum, and this has been Opinionated.